All right, welcome, ladies. We have three lovely ladies here, and afterwards we'll vote on them. But right now, no, just kidding. We'll vote on who does the best. But first we have Tina, and Tina will tell about herself in just a minute, so I won't go there. We also have Brenda, and we have Sandy. And they're going to bring, I'll talk a little bit first. Each of them are going to speak a little bit first about what their mission field was like or is like at the present. Okay?
Good to see you all here today. My name is Tina Nipper, and as we get the mic tuned in here, I am a 2001 Central Christian College of the Bible alumni, and so I graduated with my undergrad from here. And then a couple of years after teaching at a small Christian primary school in north central Missouri, I moved to China to teach full-time. I served as an English teacher in 4 different Chinese cities, mostly at the university level. I spent 2 years studying Chinese language in the northeast of China because after 6 years of teaching English, it felt only fair to really, spend the time to invest in learning the Chinese people's heart language. While I served in China, I earned my master's in TESOL and intercultural studies. And then in 2014, during one of my home assignments, I worked with a teacher sending organization. But during one of my home assignments, I was getting ready to come home and I was basically desperate. I had done a home assignment in 2009 and ended up working for the United States Census. If anybody remembers the 2010 census, not doing that again. I was really stuck with how in the world am I going to find something to do in America that's as meaningful and as satisfying as what I was privileged to do while I was teaching English in China. And so basically I sent Central Christian College of the Bible a little letter that said, I'm desperate. I will work in the cafeteria. Do you need a dorm mom? I'll work in maintenance. Mark won't enjoy it, but we'll try. And so in 14-15, during that year of home assignment, they allowed me to teach an English class and then let me teach their TESOL online certificate since I had a master's in that. And then they kept me as an online teacher when I went back to China. And I spent from 2015 until about 2018 in China working for the same university. When I came back because I'd heard my dad was ill, and so I returned from the field because my aging parents needed extra care. And so again, sent a desperate email saying, so could I work on campus now? And so they allowed me to teach an another English composition class. And then a few years ago, they started letting me teach missions classes. And so now I'm working on my PhD from Biola in intercultural studies. Actually, it's intercultural education because I love teaching. But my goal is to eventually teach mostly missions classes, and I'll, pick up a composition class every now and then because I'm a bit of a grammar nerd. And that's basically what I'm doing. I've been teaching here now since about 15.
My name is Brenda Curtis, and my husband happens to be one of the professors here. He's a missions professor. It was probably, and if you notice, I have the white hair between these two lovelies who are younger than I am. So it's been quite a while since I've been involved in missions. So when I was at Nebraska Christian College, my very first chapel there, a young man came up to the podium and he gave that opening message. And when I heard him speak, I knew I was going to marry that man. So anyway, so we've been married since 1975. Yeah, it'll be 50 years this year. So he had done an internship in Austria, working with TCM International, and that just really got to me, and his fervor and his excitement of his work. So we married, and immediately after we married, we moved to Austria. Small town girl from Nebraska. We moved to we didn't live in Vienna, but we lived out at TCM International in Heiligenkreuz, a small community there. So while there, we had the real awesome missionary career of traveling and working behind the Iron Curtain. The Iron Curtain did not come down until 1989, but during our time, we were traveling into Czechoslovakia and Romania and Hungary and Poland, and we were smuggling in and we were smuggling out. We were not doing full-on evangelism, as in doing street evangelism, because that would never have been allowed. But we were encouraging those Christians who had to live under that strong communist reign. And so from that, we learned a lot about how do we live under an empire that tends to keep you from living a full life. Let's just say that. So from there we came back. Well, let me go back. He was arrested on the border, and so that arrest in Hungary, and then entering into the Soviet Union, that arrest made it impossible for us to stay working there with that type of work. So we moved back to the States and went into immediate culture shock because the United States just was so different than our work working in Europe. We moved to Denver then, where we had a local ministry. I gave birth to 4 children, so I was busy. I wasn't doing mission proper, but I was doing mission ministry. From that time on then, we moved to Centralia. Carrie Mitchell's here from Centralia. And we met a man from India who was a missionary in Chennai, or Madras, India, southern India, who invited Michael to come and work with them in India. So let's see, about 2005 was the first time I was able to go to India and work there with some of the individuals there. And after I received my bachelor's degree here from Central, I went on and got my master's degree from Johnson University. So I was able then to go teach in India some courses on theology at their seminary. Missions has just been a part of our family. We have a daughter who ran a birthing clinic in Haiti. And so I probably spent 6 or 7 times down in Haiti working with women there. We have hosted many people from other countries in our home for long-term stays. A gentleman from Pakistan, one time by himself, and then he came back with his entire family, and they stayed with us for 3 weeks. We were able to develop a relationship when we were in Eastern Europe with a gentleman who was from Romania. He was an agronomist who had come to the United States and had worked at a university here. But then when he went back to Romania, he was isolated into the Romanian tundra. And so he had a very difficult time. So we were able to be instrumental in bringing him out of the country and then having him become a U.S. citizen. He became a dear friend of ours, stayed with us a lot. We've had friends from India and from Haiti stay with us. Our dream was then to sell our home that we had and go back to the mission field, and that was about 2001. Anybody know what happened then? COVID. Trade towers went down. So that kind of was a kibosh on that. So then we moved to an area. Is there anybody here from northeast Missouri? Bethel, Missouri.
Oh, no.
So we worked with Bethel, Missouri, in Bethel, at Bethel Christian College. And again, an Indian couple were living in the area, so we worked with them. And she came to school here, and her future husband did as well. So we've not been on the field living full-time, more like Tina had, or like Sandy's going to share with you with her history. But missions is just part of what we do as Christians. It's not, I'm a missionary. Isn't it nice that you don't have to be? We are all missionaries. So I think that's about all I would have to say.
Thank you, Brenda.
Hi everyone, my name is Sandy Eccles. I was born in South Africa. I became a U.S. citizen in 2019. My husband David Eccles and I graduated from Central in 2009, and shortly after that we moved to Namibia, Africa, and we were missionaries there up until 2021 on the field. We established a bunch of Bible studies, or Thrive groups as we call them. And we had an internet cafe, and we had a tennis ministry, and my main ministry focus was young and pregnant, where I had a ministry for young teenagers. We had about 200 teen girls come through the ministry in the years that we had. And then, so that whole ministry part of our life came to a close in 2021 when we came back because of COVID, because of a lot of things was happening. I had some medical issues that we had to come to this country. But the ministry for the Namibian side is thriving and going really well. So we're still invested there, we're still working there, we're just working there from this side. But our whole ministry there now is run by Namibians. And it's being run by the young people who were in our very first Bible study. They are now the director, and they're on the board, and they're on the leadership out there. So I'm going to give them a special shout out. In 2021, I don't know if anyone here knows Don Stoll, but he had been one of our supporters for a very long time. And his son was part of an organization in Colombia, Barry Stoll, called City of Refuge, that works with refugees. And we had spoken while we were still in Namibia when we knew we were making this heart-wrenching decision to come back here, that we had watched the scenes in the airport in Kabul in Afghanistan when these Afghans were fighting for their lives and the Taliban were blowing people up. And we thought, well, we know someone who works with refugees. It's in Columbia, Missouri. We did go to Moberly. We have a lot of connections there. Let's start going in this direction and see how far God takes us. And now we both work with City of Refuge. My husband is the director of something that I can't call right now.
But it's really
Director of Development, and it's not like Phil is, not developing the finances, but developing the refugees. Because a lot of people come in, we have people who are medical professionals in their country, and then war breaks out or whatever happens, and they come here and they have to start as a Walmart associate. And how can we help them learn English? How can we help them navigate the school system for their kids, or doing whatever it is they need to develop from being a person with nothing, a person with no resources, a person with no one they can call, to being an upstanding, contributing member of society in the United States. That's what David is doing with City of Refuge. I am mostly helping with legal immigration work. I am currently pursuing Department of Justice accreditation, which would mean that I am accredited to practice immigration law. This role is specifically designed for people who can't pay immigration lawyers. For example, if you were to apply for asylum, it costs about $7,000, would be the cheapest you could have. So if you imagine you're a Ukrainian who is here on vacation and war broke out in your country and now you want to apply for asylum, do you have $7,000 per family member? Probably not. So the Department of Justice created this rule to help people navigate the legal immigration system without having to pay thousands and thousands of dollars. So hopefully I'll be able to do that. I got my first approval letter from the USCIS. I'm just waiting for the Executive Office of Immigration something or other to give me my final yes. And then we also have a Bible study with Burmese youth in our house once a week. So we're talking about all the youth lingo and slang that I'm getting to stay up on.
Good. So now you know a little bit about our missionaries. We're going to start with a couple of questions here for them. Can you share an experience where you witnessed a breakthrough moment in evangelism, where someone truly understood the message for the first time? And I think Sandy's going to lead us off on that.
So I want to share a story about someone in Namibia. I'm going to change his name because I don't actually have his consent to share the story, so we're just going to call him Joe Schmo. So Joe out in Namibia, we had been there for 2 years. We had been working at a school, and this local ministry asked us to come out and work with these youth, because these youths of today, they don't know respect, they don't know this, they don't know, can you please come and help with this crazy youth group? So we came, and we came with cake, and we had music, and we had games, and there's like 20 kids in this group. One guy showed up. He had a lot of cake. Joe Schmo came. Joe was very faithful. And the second week, we were there and Joe was there. Nobody else was there. Joe had a terrible attitude about being there. He would sit on his phone, and we'd say, do you want to do the lesson? And he'd go, yeah, I guess. Okay, so it was very awkward. But the third week, we showed up and Joe showed up. And one other person showed up, and we're like, yes, this ministry is doubled. That sounds great in your newsletter. Dear church, our ministry doubled. So we kept coming, Joe kept coming, the ministry grew, Bible studies grew out of it, a young and pregnant ministry grew out of it, hundreds of teen girls. Joe never committed his life to Christ. More people came in. This was like 5 years into the ministry. We're having a Christmas party with these youth, and we've grown with them now. We know them. We know the struggles that they have. Namibia is the place in the world with the highest concentration of the HIV virus and the TB virus together. So there's a whole generation missing. You have a lot of grandparents, you have a lot of young people, but the middle generation, they've all passed away from AIDS. So all the youth in our group, you can just assume none of them have parents, and that most of their parents died when they were in elementary school. So we were doing things like, we had a white elephant gift exchange, or baking birthday cakes for people. And we were 5 years into this ministry, and Joe goes at this Christmas party, oh, let's go around and say something, how's your week going? And he said, I just want to say that I imagine this is what family feels like we're a family to each other. And I was like, oh. This is, like, I thought I was just baking a cake, or, just, when you're young and you're at Central and you're learning about missions, you think you're going to run onto the mission field and just start willy-nilly baptizing people, and your elbow's going to hurt from all the baptisms. But then you get out there and you get to learn who the people are and all the pain that they have, and you learn that the message that you're sharing is so much more than that. It's so much more than saying, oh, God loved you, so I sent his son. But it's like, hey, I'm a person, and you're a person. How can I love you? Like, how can my faith motivate every day that I spend with you in such a way that you decide that you also are interested in this faith? Instead of me running out, and this person is a project for my newsletter, this person becomes a person. So the question is asking that they truly understand the message for the first time. I think after all these years on the mission field, I understood the message for the first time. After going out and studying, and I'm going to go out there, big missionary. It doesn't really mean anything if you're on the field, if you're just there to love people. So we were there all these years, doing all this work, writing all these great newsletters. People are coming, they're being baptized. Our mission is thriving, it's doing really well. Joe is he's there every week. He was our most faithful attendee to anything. If we did a golf ministry or a tennis ministry or cookie ministry, he was there first and he'd leave last. But he was never ready to give his life to Christ. And it was probably 2020 during COVID when we were like, okay, Joe, what's going on here? And he said, I understand that committing my life to Christ is not just this decision I make. And I don't feel like I'm ready to make this decision, because I really want to live for Christ when I make this decision. I'm not going to take this lightly. And so we're like, okay, that makes sense. We're not here to just convert people. We're here to love God's people, and it's up to him and it's up to them when they make that decision, right? So right before we were going to leave, it was, I think, 2 weeks before we were getting ready to leave, he said, okay, let's do it. I'm going to get baptized. And in true Joe fashion, he wanted everyone to wear matching white outfits for the day, so we all got our matching outfits, but yeah, that wasn't us, that was God. And that's my story about how we remained faithful, he remained faithful, and God met us there.
It's good. Good.
I really love Sandy's story, because I think she brings up something that's really true when you do evangelism and missions, is knowing the people and understanding how they think, understanding how God created their culture, and understanding that that impacts how you share the gospel with them. And obviously if I worked in China, you're gonna understand why I don't tell you details, but there was someone that I knew in one of the cities that I lived in. She had had English teachers at multiple different stages of her life. Like, she had an American English teacher when she was in high school who, did the Christmas parties and the Easter parties. And then she had an American teacher when she was in her undergrad who did the Christmas parties and the presentation-y things for Easter. And then she became a teacher and she got married and she had a kid, and she always felt dissatisfied with something in her life. And so she tried every new hobby there was. And I worked with her for quite a few years. And finally, you know, she kept showing this thing that she was missing something. And I said, you know, do you want to like talk about what this could really mean to you? And I'd already had 4 years of friendship invested in her. We talked about the problems she was having raising her kid, which was hilarious because I am single and I am not a mom. And she's kind of like, I have this 2-year-old that I just met. This is where you ask for wisdom. But one of the things I had the opportunity to do in that 4 years was to learn how Chinese people think and to learn how the language that we have in scripture matches some of the things in their culture. So instead of talking about God as a law giver, we talked about him as a father. And we talked about how he takes our shame, which is very culturally appropriate. And so, like Sandy's story, you spend time knowing people and how they think because the gospel is big enough to fit into any culture. It is not syncretized. You are not taking things of their religion and putting into the gospel, but the gospel speaks to every culture. And so you've got to learn the culture so that you can share that story that is bigger than other stories in a way that they understand. And so we focused on the idea that, you know, she started out and the way she was supposed to be created was in perfect harmony with the one who created her. And she got that. She's like, oh yes, harmonious society, which is a big Chinese buzzword at the time. And she's like, yes, yes, yes. And so then we move through the gospel presentation, looking at it as we have fallen from harmony. How do we get back? And so talking about, you know, where shame comes from and how do we get rid of shame. Oh my goodness, the creator who made us would take our shame for us, and it completely changed her understanding of all these Christmas parties she went to, all these Easter parties she went to, because we were finally using the language that fit into what she understood as reality. And so I think when you're talking about evangelism and mission context, you gotta love and know those people so that you can explain how this big God, who is not American, really loves who they are as who they are.
Our next question comes with some ideas of what things a church or an individual could do to help a missionary and their family while they are on the field.
I would say if you have a missionary on the field that you are supporting, really find out what exactly they are doing. We had many people say, oh, the Eccles working with those tiny orphans in Africa. We never actually worked with any tiny orphans. So I think there's a lot of practical things too, but I think for the missionaries' mental well-being, for the missionaries in motion, just really be invested in the work that they're doing and actually know what country it is, where it is on a map, what things that they might be going through that, you know, might be in the news.
Tina has a little something to say about this too.
I resonate with that, and I think part of my answer of how you can really help and bless the missionaries that you know that have went out from your church or that have went out from your family is to pray for them. And I'm not talking about Sunday school prayer. I'm talking about their picture on your fridge. They get prayed for at every meal. They get brought up in your church services. They are brought up multiple times, and not the kind of like, and Jesus helped the missionaries. That's a very valid prayer. We appreciate it. Thank you very much. But we need people who will intercede and say, keep them safe. Make their ministry fruitful. Help them figure out what they're going to do when they have to come home on home assignment. Help them figure out how they're going to pay for that car because now their family's big and they can't fit in a taxi or on a motorbike. That kind of prayer that knows what they need. If you aren't told because they're terrible newsletter writers like me, call them, find out what do they need, and do that kind of really intentional, really diligent prayer for them. And if you're doing that, the other stuff's going to get done. I really believe that if we are praying for our missionaries, and we've really picked a couple to invest in both in our prayer time and in our finances, that kind of relationship and partnership, you're going to be effective. It's going to be fruitful. It's going to bring the other things in their lives to how it should be because there are people praying for them.
May I add one thing? I would also suggest that, and I'm amiss at this, but if you have a missionary that you're supporting and they're in a particular country, get to know about that country's dynamic situation. Find out what the cultural obstacles will be for your missionary who has to work with them. Learn about their politics. These countries have very long histories, and sometimes we're just not interested in knowing about what has shaped them and brought them to where they are. So, for instance, we have someone that we support who's in Japan. I know Japan, from World War II, but I don't know much about Japan and what the culture is and what the people struggle with. Your missionary has to learn all that, but if you want to converse with your missionary about what's going on in that country, you want to be able to ask intelligent questions like you do care and you're interested in what's going on for them in that country and the people they're working with.
That's very good. Just keep that for a second. Brenda's going to share a little bit about, I think she has a little example of something you could do that's something that she has witnessed with a church or an individual that was not helpful in the missionary, in caring for her missionary.
Okay, first I'm going to say when we started our missionary work, there was no such thing as caring for missionaries. So that's a whole new field that's opened up we recognized, and in our day, we went to the mission field and you were there for 2 or 3 years, and you might have contact with your loved one through a little letter they sent on those little thin, folded up aerograms. You're not going to get a phone call because those are exorbitant. They're very, very expensive. So you are really sort of invested into that culture and to that country with those people. We did get one phone call, though, while we were on the mission field, and it happened to be our very best friend had been killed suddenly in a car accident. So we didn't just immediately hop on the plane to go home to a funeral. That just wasn't done then. And it wasn't until we returned back to the States and went to the hometown where he was born and met with his parents that we sat, and all those years of that grief just came out with his parents as we grieved his loss. But it was different then. And so when we started getting the internet and getting Facebook, MySpace and then Facebook, and now all the social media platforms that we can connect with one another, it is really different today than what it was many years ago. Perhaps that's a plus. You can stay in contact with your family, but you may also find that it turns you homeward too often. So I'm supposed to share about an act of caring that was probably not most helpful. Okay, so my daughter, I told you, she was a midwife delivering babies in Haiti, and so she organized and ran this birthing clinic. So I would fly down there frequently and visit with her and work with her. So this one time I thought, I've got to be able to do something other than watch you deliver babies, or watch you stitch up someone's macheted injury on their hand. So what can I do? I'm going to teach them how to quilt, because I was really big into quilting then. So let's go ahead and I'll teach them how to quilt. Okay, great. Where can we go buy fabric in Haiti? Oh, I guess nowhere. Do we have any tools that I could use? Oh, I guess not. So we used a square tile, to cut our blocks out. But where do we get our fabric? Well, some very well-meaning, and I'm sure they were very well-meaning individuals back home thought, we have all these hospital scrubs that we're not using. So who else could use them but the birthing clinic and the medical team down there that she was working with? So as we're trying to come up with where can we find some fabric, she remembered, oh, that's right, we have all those barrels filled with all the hospital scrubs, the medical scrubs. Okay, great, because I'm sure there'll be like puppies on some, it's gonna have all those little juvenile prints. That'll be great fun to make a quilt. So we pulled out the scrubs. Now, I'm not joking. I don't mean to be disrespectful, but they were 3X's. Now, I don't know if you understand anything about an impoverished country. So very few people are going to be that large or ever need those scrubs. So they sat there in those barrels until we came to make a quilt. So we pulled them all out, we washed them, we pressed them, and then we cut our squares out, and I taught them how to make a, whatever it's called, but I taught them how to make a star, and they stitched it all by hand. But then they weren't satisfied with just following my little idea of how we're going to make that square block. They all, can we do some embroidery on it too? So they did their own embroidery, which is beautiful. Then they embroidered their names, and they had their unique stitches that they wanted to have on the block. I brought those blocks home then with me, and I put them together in a large quilt. And I did not realize that I brought them home in March of I brought them home in 2010, and 2011 we had the earthquake that hit Haiti. And so these women's hands, their work was in this large quilt I made, king size quilt, and we were able to auction that off at a fundraiser to send money back for those individuals who had suffered such great loss in Haiti. So send what you want to send, but realize that not everything you want to send is needed in the places where you want to send it. So that means, we do need to be aware of the places where our missionaries live.
My first year that I worked in China full-time, I worked in Beijing, and my church had never sent a missionary that had grown up in their church, let alone have ever sent a missionary to China. So I did not do a good job of educating my church about China and what was available in China, and they decided to send me a care package. In the same care package, I had a probably gallon-sized bag of used tea bags because they were worried I couldn't buy tea in China. And a full 12-pack of ramen noodles. So we thought you'd be hungry and you would miss America. And I was thinking, I am literally in the land of tea and ramen noodles. So very well intentioned, but I mean, 20 years later, I can look back and be like, I should have educated better.
All right, let's move on to our next question. What do you wish people in the U.S. understood more about the realities of mission life? Sure.
For me, I can't speak for all missionaries, but there's an underlying sadness of being a successful missionary because you never feel like you're home again. You're always missing somewhere, you're always missing someone. Like we went out to Namibia and these people became our friends and our surrogate family members, and then we just had to leave them. And it's difficult to explain that to someone because people are like, oh, but you're back home. Okay, but home doesn't mean anything. Home becomes a very charged or triggering word for missionaries. So as you interact with the missionaries in your life, maybe give them an extra hug and say, I'm happy you're here, but I know that you're also missing a place and a people.
Very good. Very good.
I kind of would have taken that question a little differently. What do I wish people here in the U.S. understand about the realities of the world outside of the U.S.? And even while we were in Europe, there was the idea of that arrogant U.S. Tourist. But we come in missions, we come in with the attitude that we have all the answers, yes, because we're in the West and we have all the answers.
Thank you.
And we then come in with a paternal attitude, like we are the ones who can give you the answers, and we fail to ask the individuals, what are your needs? We fail to go there first. We tend to come in with this attitude. Now, I'm sure not everyone does, and you don't. So, no.
It just took me 5 years.
And I think we need to find a way to have those of us here respect the cultural differences of those that we're trying to share the gospel with, and even where we live here. we are such an individual focused nation of people that what I want is the best thing for me regardless of who it hurts. And if I'm not happy in a relationship, or if I'm not happy with the tasks that God has called me to do, I'm just gonna shed that off, and I'm gonna go do something else. No matter if it hurts the community or the church that I'm in. Like I said, we have this U.S. exceptionalism that seems to overshadow. And trust me, those in the other countries that we go work with, they recognize that's our attitude. We need to understand our politics well because they pay attention to our politics. Not all, but a lot of the world does focus on what's going on in the U.S. because if something tragic happens here, it's going to ricochet out to them, as we're seeing already with all the things going on in our politics. Those who are here in the U.S. need to come to terms with the fact that we are all sent. We are all in Christ, and if we're in Christ, who sits at the right hand of the Father, He's sitting at the right hand of the Father. Why? To be sent. And so if we're in Christ, we need to wait for God to send us. And so He's always sending us. And family matters. It really matters in other countries, sometimes more than we recognize. There was a situation I was aware of that after a disastrous tsunami, advisors came in, and their advice was, we have aid for you, you women who have lost your loved ones in the tsunami. We have aid for you, but really, you need to be sterilized. And so, if you would be sterilized, the funds would come. And so we don't value that kind of life that they are choosing. Okay, that's enough for me.
Okay. So, yeah, Tina, as a woman in mission work, have you faced unique challenges or experiences that are different from your male counterparts?
On many occasions. Both guys and girls need to be aware of gender dynamics when they cross cultures. Understanding what's appropriate, what's acceptable for your gender, and what's not acceptable for your gender. The context that I worked in with China, China, like many countries, is very patriarchal. A lot of things are said about how women hold up half the sky, and yet all of the deans are men. All of the administrators are men. And so some of those things have happened. Being extremely situationally aware is kind of necessary. Some of the places in Asia that I traveled, like knowing where my purse is and always having some extra money hidden inside my clothing, or having some, special hiding places for my passport, knowing where I'm staying, what part of the city I'm in. Those kinds of things happen a lot in a lot of different places where women have to be a lot more security conscious. They have to be a lot more aware that some opportunities will not be available, that if they had been in a different context, maybe it would have been available, and vice versa. There are some places that men can't go. I'm not trying to say that women have it harder than men. But for me as a single woman, that's where I think a lot of some of my challenges came from. I worked in a team dynamic, so that meant I was never working for a school as the only American. I was always on a team. And in the last probably 8 years of my career, I was always on teams with married people who had families. And there were some assumptions that had to be worked out every single semester where I'm like, I know I'm single, but I do have a life. And while I love that you go home and wash dishes for your wife and your kids, I don't want to judge every single English speech competition for the rest of eternity. So you need to take your turn. So learning how to advocate for myself was a really hard lesson. I really struggled with that because I had some kind of like, well, I guess I want them to take care of their kids, so I guess I'm going to go and judge this speech competition again. I didn't like that every Friday night was an English speech competition. They're wonderful. I love my students, but that's not fun. That's just not fun. Some odd things that came up because of the context and the places that I lived. I have lied to people's face and say that my husband is waiting at home for me because that was necessary for my safety. I have dodged gropers. I have been stalked. So that idea, there are things that a woman just needs to be a little bit more aware of. But then on the other side, I feel like anytime you have challenges, you have some other side. I got to learn more about Chinese femininity, and I got a chance to learn about the struggles they face being women in a system that tells them that they're equal and it's not. And how do we face inequality? I think that women have a lot of opportunities to speak into that, to commiserate, yes, without bashing men, because they are also made in the image of God. So those are some of the challenges that I felt that I experienced as a woman, just being very, very aware of like who I talk to, how I talk to. I needed to be extra aware of that, because there were times where there were things I couldn't see because I was a woman. There were relationship dynamics in the leadership above me on the Chinese side of my life, and even in the church, on the Chinese leadership in the church on that side of my life, that because I was a woman, I wasn't always going to get the clearest picture of. And so I had to be very thoughtful about how I approached starting a new Bible study, or who I had in my Bible studies, or where I placed my Bible study. For a while, in one of the places I worked, we had the two ladies on our team stayed in an apartment together, and our middle room was like the lunchroom for the foreign teachers. And then the guys' apartment had our English language library for our school. And so being aware of where I was when I had certain conversations was absolutely necessary. Like, could I have a guy in my apartment to talk about English questions when my roommate wasn't there? Nope. Nope, because the people downstairs knew which apartment I lived in. And so just being aware of things like that you don't, discredit your ministry because you didn't realize there was a something going on.
Well, I'm going to skip a question, and Brenda touched on this a little bit, but we're getting close to the end here. We have just a couple of minutes left. Would any of you like to talk about practical ways that these folks could do missions in their own backyard?
Columbia, Missouri, 12% of your population is foreign-born. We have refugees, thousands of refugees in Columbia, Missouri, from Burma and Afghanistan and the Congo and Ukraine and Russia and Syria and so many different cultures. So if you are interested in working with a Muslim family, you don't have to go to Afghanistan. If you want to learn about a different culture, you can just come down to City of Refuge. I have some coupons back there to entice you to come to we have a food truck that is open on Tuesdays and Fridays. We have a thrift store that is very beautifully curated things. It does not smell like grape Kool-Aid, like all thrift stores seem to smell. So you can come in. Any money that is spent there goes directly to directly to refugee support and refugee care. I would love to speak more with you.
And let me tell you a little bit. City of Refuge is right across the street from the Columbia Public Library. Everybody know where that is? There used to be a bank. They're right across the street from that. Go ahead.
If you're interested in coming down for a tour, if your church group wants to come down, we can do that, and we can show you all of the fun and incredible things we're doing. So missions work is difficult and emotional, but it's also fun and exciting, and it's a sacred space to step into and see what God is doing in people's lives.
I have this little plug that I didn't ask for, but I don't know how many of you know, but our students here at Central Christian College of the Bible just returned from their spring break mission trips. We had 35% of our student body was out. 3 of the 4 trips did go out of the country, but one of them chose to go out of the state to Utah to learn about how to specifically speak to and understand the culture of Mormonism. You like that phrasing? They're not a cult, but a culture. And they did that with the intention of being able to come back to Moberly, Missouri. That is a whole new culture. People who look like you, but think quite differently than you, and they are everywhere. And so that is also, you can work with people who are from an international background, but even within, your own town, there could be people who are fundamentally working with a different mindset, but they need Jesus, and he loves them too.
I think we're finished with our time.
I thought you were being exclusive for, aren't you?
What's that?
Are you supposed to go to 4?
I was understanding that next workshop starts at 4. We were to go at 3:45. At 4:30. Oh, so we have more
You
time.
can take
Yeah, more
questions.
time.
Okay, yes. Yes. I have more questions too. Does anybody have any questions they'd like to ask? Good.
I might, and I'm not a presenter, but I might add what Sandy was saying, City of Refuge.
Yes.
Wonderful ministry, but they look for people to help with language learning with the young kids, and there's all sorts of neat things, but there's also, I want to see this, there's a driving simulator. And again, these people are coming in, and they need to learn how to drive, and they need helpers with that just to be there, right? So, yeah, it sounds exciting, but I'm gonna learn how to drive.
This Afghan lady was in the driver's seat, and her husband was in the passenger seat, and Vivi, our driving instructor, was behind her. And she had to go around a left turn or a right turn, I don't know, some kind of turn. And Vivi went, no, and her husband went, no, and she went, she fainted. So if any of you would like the exciting experience of someone who can't speak English fainting next to you in moving traffic, find me afterwards. She's fine, they're fine.
That wasn't in the simulator, that was on the street?
No, she graduated the simulator, she was ready for the streets, but the streets weren't ready for her.
Does anybody have any questions for these ladies? I do. All right, so what is it like balancing family life with the demands of missionary work?
So in my work right now, as in Namibia, when I was doing Young and Pregnant, there's a lot of very heavy things that people carry. There are people coming in who are coming in from being sexually assaulted, from being, maybe their baby just died, or maybe their dad kicked them out of the house because they decided to become a Christian, or maybe they're happy that their 50-year-old boyfriend and their 16 only hits them in the face when they're pregnant, so that's a big thing they come to tell you. And then now working with refugees, people are coming in some of the most horrific things we as human beings can experience. People are coming into my office and they're sitting there and maybe they've survived a gang sexual assault situation. Maybe they've watched their family members be murdered in front of them by warlords. Maybe they had to grab what they have and run in the middle of the night. And people come and they sit in my office and they cry. And I had to get to a place in my life, in my heart, in my mind, where I am fully with that person in that moment, and I can cry with them and I can bear their burden with them. But when I step away from them, I have to kind of leave that there and kind of get to a point where I realized I didn't die for anyone. And I have this saying, Sandy, get off the cross. Like, I didn't die for these people. Jesus died for them. God is going to be invested. He's invested everything into these people. I need to get to a point where I can leave this pain in this office when I go home, because it's not fair to my husband and my children and my rescue poodle to carry that heaviness into my home. So what I have found is and this is going to make me sound like a crazy person, but after dealing and helping to carry all of this trauma with people, I feel like I laugh a lot more. I feel like I'm finding a lot more joy in life, and that honestly, my first response when something happens is to look for what makes this funny. Because life is just so fast, and there's so much pain, there's so much cruelty, there's so much confusion. So why don't I add some order with my legal work and some joy with, like, let's make a fun, like, these Afghan ladies one day, we were decorating cakes, and they were so ugly. And these ladies were cracking up, and then they started talking about one day it was raining, and they were running. This is in Afghanistan, and while they were running, their ankles showed. So the Taliban pulled them to the side and beat them within an inch of their life. But they're cracking up. So now we're all sitting there laughing at the story of the Taliban beating these women. And is it funny? No, it's not funny. But at some point, it's a bit funny. It's a bit funny that you can get to the point and go, life is just so absurd that in one country, my biggest question is, did I take chicken out to defrost for dinner? And in another country, it is, do I have to sell my daughter to the warlord so my sons will have food tonight? And that's a little bit absurd. And so in my line of work, I found that finding joy and finding silliness in every day has helped me to find that work-life balance.
So we have another question that this will open up a little bit of a can of worms probably. What are the advantages and disadvantages of short-term mission trips? So we have some examples that obviously our students here just went out on short-term mission trips. And some people say, oh, it's just not worth it. I spent $5,000 going over there to visit for 2 weeks. You know, and I could have just sent that money to them instead.
While I was on the field, I had what I will call a privilege. The last city that I worked in, the organization I was with had a cooperating agreement with another organization that's based here in the States called Campus Outreach. And so every summer, Campus Outreach would send a group of people on what was called a cultural exchange program. So we would have these American college kids come to our university campuses for about 4 weeks. And they came with enthusiasm and a distinct inability to look at their phones or navigate the Chinese bus system. So for a month, we long-term missionaries, the people who had stayed there and worked there and knew the culture and knew the students, we would have these crazy high energy college students just be bopping around our city. There were times where that was really dangerous. I pulled some of them aside at different times and I'm like, please don't get us kicked out of China. And other times where I'm like, I'm so glad you're willing to do the 10th dance party this week while I go home and go to bed at a normal time. That was, during my 30s. So there's some advantages to short term, but my experience has been that it works really well when it partners with long term. That there's something happening already and then short term comes and partners with that and provides some needed energy because, I was slogging through how many lesson plans and writing assignments as a teacher. I didn't want to do dance parties. I didn't want to do makeup parties. I didn't want to party. I just wanted to get my work done. And so I found it helpful, but I always felt like it worked better if there was some kind of understanding of what kind of work is being done and then partnership.
One of the advantages is they can always be a cautionary tale. We received many short-term mission trips. We loved most of them. But short-term mission trips are fantastic because it's a way that you can invest into people who might turn around and become an advocate for you once they're back home. One of the disadvantages is it is exhausting. It is a lot of work for the missionary to do the logistics of how to get these people from the airport to your house. Phil and Teresa came to our house. They flew out all the way to Namibia. It's like a 24-hour, 30-hour flight. And I was in the mall with my kids, walking along, and my phone rings, and it's a number I don't know. And I don't normally answer the phone, but I think it was the Holy Spirit or my conscience telling me answer, and I answered, and it's Teresa, and she goes, are you coming to the airport there, buddy? I had the wrong day. So I rushed home to like rage cleaning. Like I was like that rage cleaning, like yelling at the kids, like because the room wasn't ready for them, and David had to rush to the airport, and then I'm like, okay, drive slowly on your way back. But Phil and Teresa are some of our greatest advocates here, and they came out and they just served us for the whole time they were there, and it's that picture from the Bible of you can do the work while your hands are up, but then your hands get tired, and they were out there to raise our arms. So we would always say yes to short-term mission teams because of the investment and the advocating people do for you afterwards. We did have one short-term trip from the Beverly Hills 90210 something church. I don't remember the name of the church. I'm not trying to hide them. But it was a movie producer and an actress, and that was one day they pulled a bunch of cash out of the ATM, and we're in one of the poorest countries in the world, and they went, come and get it, to the team members to come and get the cash. So yes, don't get us kicked out of China, people.
We used to have the phrase, loose lips sink ships.
Yep.
Well, I will be a little bit of advocate for another mission that we are involved in. We just got back from Haiti, from Sunlight Academy. And my daughter and her husband served there. This is their 6th year. But I've been a part of that ministry. Actually, I went on the very first mission trip that Roger and Norma Alexander went to Haiti on in 1980. And at that point, I don't know if any of you know Norma Alexander, she went on the mission trip with us. Her husband had gone before, and she went on the mission trip with us. And after landing in the Dominican Republic and then landing in Haiti and not being able to cross the river, so staying all night at the river with a group of 40 people, and then finally getting there, she said, I will never come and do this again. Well, she ended up serving there for 40 years.
Oh my goodness.
So don't say never. And they have perfected mission trips there over the years. They have trainings there. When you get there, they train you to tell you about the language of things to do and not to do. They put you to work. There's a school. You can do office work. Carrie Mitchell did a lot of office work this last couple weeks that we were there because they had to get out sponsorship letters. They had to do grade cards. There's just a lot of things to do. And then men who want to work, there's physical labor things to do, painting and all kinds of maintenance to do. But in those short-term mission trips, the benefit that it has been for Sunlight has been that, yes, it costs a lot of money to do that. It costs us a lot more money this time to do that because we have to reschedule flights and it's harder to get into Haiti. But because from those mission trips, people go back to their church and they are on fire and they tell everybody about that mission. And that's where they would get their teachers. They would have people that, oh, I could do this. I've been here for a couple of weeks. I could come and teach here. Or my daughter would like to come and teach here. And that's how my daughter did. My parents used to go to Haiti as missionaries. And they would take the grandkids with them. They took all of their grandchildren over the years to Haiti. They took my daughter to Haiti. And at her senior year in high school, she says, Mom, I think I want to go to Haiti. And I said, that's great. You don't have a lot of debt. You're going to get married one of these days, so you better do it now because you're marrying a farm boy and he's not going to go to Haiti. So she went to Haiti right out of college. He joined her the second year of his second semester. He joined her for a little bit. They came back. She was a principal at Tri-County Christian School. He was GPS Josh, word for Seidenstricker, and also started farming for my dad. He was farming, and they had a lot going on here. And they got the call. He felt like he got the call, we need to go to Haiti. And they left it all and went to Haiti. They left us and went to Haiti. But they're in their 6th year there. But so you never know what influence it's going to have. Those short-term trips, you don't know what influence that's going to have.
Of course, what she's saying is, never let your kids go on the mission field. You know what you're saying? Because then we have grandkids over there too, but we get to see them once a year. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, and that is a blessing, like she was talking about, the communication that they didn't used to have. I mean, they didn't have that. We talk to our kids every day. We study spelling words every day, and we talk to them all the time, and it's great.
So I started going to China when, this is before Zoom, this is before Skype. We would pay for these phone cards, and you had 20 minutes before that ran out of money. And so, you had a set day to make sure that Mom would be there to answer the phone call. And then we did Skype, and Mom never remembered how to work it after I got there. I bought her an iPhone, and then suddenly she's like, oh my goodness, that's a video. That's where you live. But
It's great.
to see that change over time of the kind of genuine connection that a supporter could have with their missionary that was unimaginable 15, 20 years ago. It's kind of an exciting time to be involved in missions, if I could say so.